I request Sri Nithin ji to give the presentation.
Gurupyo Namaha. First of all, I would like to thank Indic Academy, especially Padmavati ji for organizing the event, and Sri Harikaran Vadlama ji for facilitating the book launch. I would also like to thank Pradyumna ji and my dear friend Sai Swarupa for unveiling the book, for agreeing to be present in the event. So let me begin my presentation with a few words regarding the journey of my book, and as Pradyumna ji said, to shed light on the subtext of the book, the Shabrimala confusion. Shabrimala confusion, the subtext, the story behind this, it is both an inspiration as well as a statement of the fact. My book started, the journey of the book started with the Shabrimala issue back in 2015, long before it became so big an issue. Even then, when it went to the court and there was a huge media outcry that there is a discrimination against women in Shabrimala. So then I started researching on, that was the first time, I seriously, started thinking who is Ayyappa, what is Shabrimala, what is the temple. So I researched on this issue, I wrote on this issue, I wrote a few articles on Shabrimala, few articles on what is the issue at Shabrimala, how it is a religious issue and not a women's rights issue. But a question then that was there everywhere was, okay, fine, Shabrimala may be a religious issue, but what about menstruation? The media narrative was that Hinduism degrades women, Indian culture treats women badly by looking down upon menstruation. That is the mainstream narrative, and that was the question I asked, how true is this narrative? Is this narrative, there is any truth in it, or it is completely created propaganda? So with this, the journey of this book started. I started writing, I started with a series of articles in India Facts in 2016. And then I expanded them into a book, and it took me 2 years, and now it is finally out in 2000. So that is why the Shabrimala confusion is there. The confusion, the funny thing is, the entire issue of Shabrimala has nothing to do with menstruation, but it has been made, the narrative has been made into such that it has something to do with menstruation, but the fact is it has nothing to do with menstruation. So by creating this false equivalence, a false narrative that the issue of Shabrimala has something to do with menstruation, and in turn the Hinduism treats menstruating women in a degrading way, the entire framework or a propaganda has been built that Hinduism is misogynist and it degrades women. So I am in today's presentation, I will be speaking about this, that how it is not true and what is the exact narrative on menstruation. Let us try to understand the Hindu views of menstruation. What does our tradition says, what is our practices says, what does our shastras say on menstruation. So as I said, just summarized here what I just said, that mainstream narrative on Hindu treatment of menstruation is that Hinduism treats menstruation as an impure process, and these views are rooted in superstition, and that this results in degrading of women. Two best examples. How many of you are aware that recently a documentary made by an Indian and it is available on Netflix, titled Period and End of Sentence, it got a Oscars award. Just 2-3 days back it got Oscars award. And in India, we still have this colonial hangover. Whatever, wherever we get a from the West, any award, anything, that must be the best thing. But the fact is, uh, like a few decades ago, during the freedom struggle, there was Catherine Mayo who wrote a book on India, which Mahatma Gandhi described as gutter inspector's report. And this period and end sentence is just a continuation of that propaganda. You watch it, it has nothing to do with, it does not address any of the issue related to menstruation, it does not address the health issues connected with the menstruation, the various excessive bleeding or irregular menstruation, all those things it does not address. It's basically a story of how a low cost sanitary pads are manufactured, how they made a business, some product, I think the name is Fly, they have business. That itself is a scam. I am given to told by many lot of women on the ground who are working, how the Muruganathan, the pad man on whom the movie is made, he has, he is funded by foreign commercial interests to create a particular narrative about India. In that documentary specifically, he speaks about data about how the only less than 10% of women use pads in India. And what is the source of that data? There is no statistic, there is no basis, it is just he is making it out. But the more deeper problem with this documentary, which has won Oscars, is that its sole agenda appears to be to portray India in a poor light, to portray Indian women as ignorant and superstitious. It has particular scenes where they ask these rural women to describe what menstruation is. In Hindi में they say, वो गंदगी निकालता है or something like that, and then the whole thing is portrayed as if, oh, she is so ignorant, she doesn't know a simple thing about biology. So but the fact is, if they were little bit genuine, they would have known that what she is saying is actually true. The Ayurvedic text says that menstruation is a purifying process which removes all the toxins of the body. The toxins are called as ama. So, the rural woman who would not have learned actually gone through any Sushruta Samhita, but she has received this knowledge by her mother in that tradition, and she is actually correct. She is not wrong. So, in the later slides, I will show how problematic this modernity and modern education is. But let us not jump ahead. The second example I have mentioned here is another a Bollywood documentary, which is freely available on YouTube if you type on Sex Ki Adalat. So, it's a interesting documentary. They have a court scene. It's just a fictitious court scene. The husband is the accused, the wife is the victim. She is saying that she is being oppressed by her husband 3 days every month because of her monthly periods. Her allegation is that because her husband thinks menstruation is impure, he makes her to sit separately and he oppresses her. I mean, the whole narrative around menstruation is built upon showing or positing that Indian culture, specifically Hindu culture, treats menstruation as impure, and this is degrading to women. This is a patriarchal and misogynistic. Do they even question the definition of impurity before using the term so loosely? Unfortunately, no, they don't. So, the question that arises is, how true is the representation of Hindu views of menstruation? What is the correct meaning, what is the correct understanding of menstruation, or how Hinduism treats menstruation? So, let us begin with a story from the Vedas. My friend Sai Swarupa spoke about Rig Veda and the stories from there. So I'll be picking up a story from Yajurveda Taittiriya Samhita. Please understand, this is not a historical event. Do not ask me at what date this historical event happened or how this happened, how this historical event is wrong. This is not a historical event. It is a story. It is a itihasa, you can say. Itihasa is not a history in the sense of we understand it. It is a story of our devatas. So the story is Vishwarupa, the son of Twastar, they are the Vedic deities. So this Vishwarupa was a domestic priest of the gods, but he was also related to the Asuras. He promised the share to the gods openly. He was a priest, means he did the yagyas. So in the yagyas, he openly promised the shares to the devatas, whereas he promised the share secretly to the Asuras. And we all know that what is promised secretly is the real promise, it is delivered. What is promised openly is mostly empty promises. So the Indra, the chief devata, became very angry. He said, this Vishwarupa is diverting what belongs to me, to the Asuras, diverting my sovereignty to the Asuras. So he took his Vajra and cut off the head of Vishwarupa, thereby committing Brahmahatya, the slaying of a Brahmana, because Vishwarupa was a priest, was a Brahmana. So this is called Brahmahatya, and Brahmahatya is considered one of the heinous, one of the greatest, gravest crimes in Indian tradition, in Hindu tradition. So wherever Indra went, everybody used to call him a slayer of a Brahmana, performer of a Brahmahatya. So the guilt or the adharma or the papa associated with that Brahmahatya was so huge that Indra tried to do so many things, but he could not become free of it. So then he came to Prithvi, the mother earth. She is so compassionate, we all know. We are everyday abusing the mother earth. We dig, we mine, we do everything nonsense. She still bears with us. So Indra knew this. He is very intelligent guy. He knows, okay, let me go to Mother Earth. She will take my 1/3 guilt. So he goes to her, says, please relieve me of this burden of Brahmatya. Please just take 1/3 papam from this, and in turn I will give you a boon. So Mother Earth says, okay, I will take it. And this guilt manifested as a natural fissure that appears on the earth. And the boon she asked from Indra is that, see, people harm me by digging. So let me not be harmed by digging. So he said, okay, from now on, let people dig, but it will not harm you. With passing time, it will be filled on its own. Similarly, then he went to the trees, and they also agreed to take 1/3 papam, 1/3 of the papam from the Indra. And in turn, they also asked the boon. They asked a boon that, the pruning harms us, so let us not be harmed by it. So he said, okay, from now on, pruning will help you to grow more. And we see it. You prune the leaves, trees and plants, it grows more. And in turn, the guilt that they took manifested as a sap. The sap, the liquid that is present in the trees. And finally, he came to women. He said, see, I have only 1/3 of the guilt left now. Please take it and relieve me of the burden permanently. And they were compassionate, just like the trees and the Mother Earth. They said, okay, we will take it. In turn, they asked the boon that they obtain offsprings after the menses, and that they can enjoy sexual intimacy until the birth. And the boon was granted, but the guilt that they took upon themselves manifested as the stained garment. So the boon was that they enjoy sexual activity until the birth of the baby, and that they obtain, they be able to conceive the baby after the menses, but the guilt manifested as the stained garments or the monthly periods. So then the Yajurveda says, after narrating this story, that therefore one should not converse with a woman with a stained garments, one should not sit with her, nor eat her food, for she emits the color of guilt. One should not have intercourse with a menstruating woman. Other things to avoid for menstruating women include bathing, makeup, anointing herself, combing, brushing, cutting nails, spinning, weaving, etc. So, this is an interesting story, and as I said, this is not a historical event. So, do not think about in a chronological order. Did women did not menstruate before this story happened? See, that story, that question is meaningless, because the purpose of the story, the purpose of the account is not to give a historical incident. The purpose is, it is providing us hermeneutic principles to interpret, to understand menstruation. It is providing us a framework of how we should approach the topic of menstruation. What is the very first thing it says? It compares the manifestation, the bleeding or the monthly periods in a woman with the sap of the tree or the fissure in the earth. What does it tell? That it is a natural phenomenon. This story does not go against the biology. The very source or the very central part of the story is that menstruation is a biological phenomenon, it is a natural phenomenon, it is nothing to be afraid of, it is nothing to be ashamed about, it is something very natural, which is very integral, intrinsic to a woman, to womanhood, to what makes a woman. I do not bleed, a woman bleeds. So, that is a difference. There is no equality here, but I will not go to that area. The second thing that the story says, that there is 1/3 of Brahmahatya. So, what is this Brahmahatya? Why is it women taking it upon them? What does it convey? Again, this is connected the biological cycle. So, what is basically the biological cycle? What is this menstrual cycle? What does it happen? That the women's body prepares to receive, prepares to conceive, prepares the body to conceive, an egg is formed, and when the conception do not happen, that egg needs to be thrown out. There is a egg which has the capacity to bring a child forth, to bring a jiva, to give birth to a jiva, to give a physical body to a jiva which is waiting, right. But when the conception does not happen, a jiva which is waiting is denied this opportunity. In the case of abortion, the denial is deliberate, the denial is more greater papam, because an abortion happens after the jiva has entered the mother and it is growing in a different stage of growth and it is deliberately stopped. So, then this abortion is usually equated, the magnitude of adharma that is associated with abortion is equated to Brahmahatya, one Brahmahatya. That is, it is so great that it is equivalent to killing of a Brahmana, equivalent to murder. But in this case, it is just 1/3. Why? Because the process is does not, people do not have control over it, women do not have control over it, right. It happens, it is a natural process, but still the papam exists. So, what is the process of getting rid of this papam? The menstruation itself is the process. So, the menstruation is understood not as something associated with papam as such, though there is an element of it, but it is also understood as something which removes that papam. So, while ashaucha is understood, the impurity, see impurity is an English term, the Sanskrit term is ashaucha. I will explain the ashaucha part later, but the central aspect from this story is Ashaucha is caused by the non-fertilization of egg, which the story refers as color of guilt. But menstruation itself is a shaucha process, it's a purifying process. It removes the guilt, it makes the women free from that guilt. See the beauty of our understanding. It is not saying that menstruation is something sinful. It is saying menstruation is purifying. It removes you from a kind of papam which is inherent in the biological process. Further, the story shows that menstruation is also an austerity that assists the purification process. And since it makes childbirth possible, we saw the boon part, that women got the boon that they will be able to have childbirth, give birth to a child after menses. So, because menstruation makes that thing possible, menstruation is a dharmic process that needs to be celebrated, because giving birth to bringing a jiva into this physical realm is a very noble activity, is a very punya activity, you gain lot of punya from that. So, that is why it needs to be celebrated. So, the story in a very nutshell, in a very small interesting way, gives 5 principles, 5 frameworks for understanding menstruation, that of ashaucha, austerity, rest, self purification and celebration. And we will see each of them now in little bit depth to have a more appreciate the nuances involved in it, because in the mainstream TV narrative media, you do not get to read all those things, because they have a motivated agenda. Second, unfortunately, even our elders are completely ignorant of this. As Pradyumna ji was telling, that previously, for long time daughters have been practicing things because the mothers have told them, the grandmothers have told them. It is a good way of transmission in a family from mother to daughter, father to son. It is a very good way of transmission of knowledge. But the problem arises is when you transmit the practice without explaining the knowledge associated with the practice. Otherwise, then there is a whole scope for this practice becoming a mechanical, devoid of knowledge and open to lot of abuse and misuse and misunderstanding. So, all our practices have encoded knowledge within them, but unless we explicitly pass it on, the knowledge remains encoded, it does not become manifest, leading to various abuse of the practice, misunderstanding, so on and so forth. So, let us take ashaucha. Ashaucha is again, as I said, a Sanskrit term, what in English we call impurity, impurity, impurity. So, the first thing that comes to our mind when we think about impurity is, it is a negative term. He is impure, she is impure. No. So, why are you degrading him? So, because that is how a current narrative is done. Because the meaning given to impurity in our present narrative is a state of sin, a state of moral depravity, a state of moral degradation, and all of this are rightfully understood as negative. Yes, but does our understanding of ashaucha with respect to menstruation implies moral depravity? A clear cut answer is no. Why so? I will explain it. One of the names for menstruation in Sanskrit is Rajashrava. Rajashrava means flow of rajas. What is this rajas? Raja means blood. Raja also means rajoguna. Raja also means rajasic shakti, rajasic urja. Raja, single term, has three different meanings, at three different layers. And let us understand clearly what is the term ashaucha mean. The definition of the ashaucha in our Dharma Shastra is very clear. It pertains to ritual impurity, and the very definition is incompetency, not moral deprivation, but incompetency. Incompetency for what? For performing certain actions, in this case for performing Vaidika Agamika karmas. So, as I said, what does this ritual impurity means? Again, I will have to step back and a little bit explain. In today's biology that we read in our high schools and all, we are taught that we are this physical body. Yes, we are this physical body, we are made of bones and muscles and blood and all those things, true. But the problem with our education is we are told that this is what we are, this is just the we are, there is nothing more than that. In fact, the modern science goes, at least particular school of modern science goes to extent and says, even the thinking mind is just a product of brain, just a chemical reaction in the brain causes our thinking mind. So, this is nothing new, this is all our Charvaka argument which is being rehashed and given back to us. But that is not how the Hindu tradition understands. The Vedanta, for example, gives a five-fold layers of personality, of individuality. When I say I, aham, nanu, it not just refers to my physical body, but also my pranamaya kosha, the vital sheath, my manomaya kosha or my mind, the vijnanamaya kosha, the higher intellect, and as well as the anandamaya kosha, the layer of bliss. We will not go into the last two because that is not relevant for our discussion. But the three layers which is very relevant for our day to day activities is the Annamaya Kosha, which is the physical body. Pranamaya Kosha is the vital body. It is made up of 5 pranas that sustains life. See, we say that a person is alive when he is breathing oxygen, person is dead when he does not breathe oxygen. But the thing is, when a person dies, even then his body is filled with all kind of air. So, it is not just about the oxygen thing, there must be something else, and we call it as prana, life force, and there are 5 kinds of life force in the body: prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. They do different activities like inhalation, prana and inhalation, all those things. The apana is downward moving wind which causes excretion. Even the blood, the bleeding during menstruating women is caused by the apana vayu, the heightened condition of apana vayu, because apana is the one which removes the things from the body. So, this is called as pranamaya kosha. The manomaya kosha is the mind. So, what does impurity or ashaucha mean at the level of annamaya, pranamaya, manomaya kosha? At the physical level, during menses, there is a flow of blood. This flow of blood is called as ashaucha. If somebody has an injury and there is a flow of blood, even that person is called is said to be in a state of ashaucha for all practical purposes, for all purposes of rituals. Does it mean that I am saying that injured person is somehow inferior to me? That makes no sense. If it does not make sense in the case of injured person, why should it make sense in the case of menstruating women? Moreover, Ayurveda considers menstruation as a state of injury, because the uterine lining and all is removed from the body and is removed out of the body, and that needs to be healed. So, at the physical level, this ashaucha is merely a reference to the fact that there is a movement of blood from the body towards outside, and at the pranamaya kosha level, there is a movement of rajasic energy. Remember the term rajashrava, flow of rajas. The apanavayu, the heightened apanavayu, it's moving out, the rajasic energy is moving out. And at the mental level, manomaya kosha, the mind, the internal passions, the mind is in a very huge fluctuation. Women here can attest to this, that during their periods, lot of them experience mood swings. Sometimes they are angry, sometimes they are irritated, sometimes they just do not feel right. There may be exceptions, I am not saying everybody has the same thing, but that is the fact, that is how the whole process works. So, this is called as ritual impurity in the Manomaya kosha. So, let us understand what is Shaucha to get a perspective or a context of what is Ashaucha. Shaucha means purity, but what is this purity? Shaucha is purity in the sense that it imparts competency to perform actions. I have a whole presentation, a 1 hour presentation on what this Ashaucha and Ashaucha means, but the gist is Shaucha is purity in the sense that it imparts competency. At the physical level, this Shaucha translates into hygiene, no excretions. That is why I say you go to urination or something, this is also considered as impure because it is unhygienic. In the case of menstruation, there is a flow of blood, that is why it is unhygienic. Then Shaucha at level of prana, balance of the prana is Shaucha. There are 5 pranas, as I said, the balance of them is Shaucha, and imbalance of them, imbalance in the sense one of the pranas is in a heightened state. In the case of menstruation, the apana is in a heightened state, there is a heightened state of rajas, and hence it is Ashaucha. In the case of Manomaya kosha, the calmness of the mind should be calm, free from internal passions, free from imbalance or mood swings to the best possible degree. So, that is Shaucha, whereas mood swings in internal passions, irritation, all these are Ashaucha. Where is the question of moral degradation here? So, Shaucha imparts competency, Ashaucha imparts incompetency. So, what does it translate in practically as far as menstruation is concerned? You see the table, certain actions become unsuitable and people become unsuitable for certain other actions. For example, certain actions become unsuitable. We said do not do cooking. Why? Because the menstruating women is not supposed to food, because cooking involves a direct interaction with the food, a direct transformation of energy. Because you are in a heightened state of rajas, cooking food implies that you are transmitting your rajasic energy to the food and to the consumer of that food. So, that certain action becomes prohibited for you. You become unsuitable for certain actions, like you should not go into a temple. So, I will come to the details of that, why it happens, what are the purpose behind it, but these are the certain criteria. So, here Ashaucha at the end of the day simply means that it is related to your competency or incompetency to perform certain actions, and your own condition of the body, at the physical, pranic and mental levels, and it has zero moral connotations. And both men and women enter Ashaucha at different times. For example, there is a death of a relative, very close relative, then men as well as women enter Ashaucha. Are we saying that the people who just had a huge loss in terms of losing a parent or some relative are some kind of inferior people? No. It is merely a statement of their incompetency to perform certain Vaidika actions, certain Agamika actions, and as well as a statement of a condition of their body, the energy condition. There are a lot of details in this. And as I said, all flow of blood, whether due to menstruation or due to injury, it is considered as Ashaucha. So, in short, a menstruating woman is in a heightened condition of rajas and hence ineligible for performing certain Vaidika Agamika actions, which is termed as ashaucha. So, restrictions against cooking food, physical touch, sexual intimacy are due to this ashaucha consideration, because they involve a transmission of rajasic energy. Ashaucha makes one ineligible for spiritual activity. Interesting. So, as I said, so the question now we should ask is, if ashaucha is merely a reference to the heightened condition of rajas in a menstruating woman and her ineligibility to perform certain actions, that is, if ashaucha is merely understood as a reference to ineligibility and the fact that she is in a heightened condition of rajas and has no connotations of morality, so how come, from where does this narrative coming that Hinduism degrades women by calling menstruation as impure? How come this narrative of equating impurity, the term impurity, with moral degradation, the state of sin and all those things? The answer is in my book in a very elaborated manner, but in a short manner, in a very single line, if I have to answer here, the answer is Abrahamic theology, particularly Christian theology. And all Abrahamic faiths, especially Christianity, they believe this story of, I don't know how many of you are familiar, the story of the fall of Adam and Eve, the first man and first woman, Adam and Eve, and they were happy together in the Garden of Eden. The God has commanded them to not eat the forbidden apple, but Eve, goaded by a serpent, ate the apple, made Adam eat the apple, and they both were removed from the Garden of Eden, and they were made to fall to human existence. So, in short, they call this the original sin, the first sin, the original sin of the first original man and woman, especially the woman, because she was the one who first gave in to the temptation. So, the story goes in their Old Testament and all, the God punished the woman by saying that because of your sin, you will have menstruation, you will start bleeding each month. So, they believe that every month the women around us who are the progenitors of that original woman, they partake the sin of that original woman, they partake in that original sin. So, during the monthly menstruation, they enter a state of sinfulness. Can you make the connect, can you connect the dots now? It is a Christian theology which says menstruation is impure, and it is impure because women enter a state of sinfulness during their menstruation. This is the Christian theology, and this theology, mind you, this is not an innocent theological construct. These constructs have real life implications, as I quote in my book. This understanding of menstruation resulted in deaths of at least 8 to 10 million women in medieval Europe who were accused of witchcraft. The witchcraft, menstruation, they are all closely connected. All women, because they bleed during monthly menses, were seen as practicing witchcraft and sorcery, and they were put to death. So, this was a real practical consequences. This is not a story, not a formulation, they had real life effects. So, it is this, when the West developed secularism, they started critiquing the church and Christian theology, they took upon this definition of impurity, that impurity means the state of sinfulness, and they applied this definition into all cultures, especially the non-Christian, non-West, non-white cultures. And unfortunately, India being a colonial country, we are being still in the huge grasp of colonialism. Our scholars, our feminists, our activists, we have simply copy and pasted the Western discourse on menstruation into an Indian context. instead of critiquing the Christianity, here we are critiquing Hinduism, because we thought, oh, impurity, ashaucha means impurity, so it must also mean degradation of women. But the fact is, there is no correspondence, there is no correlation between a Christian understanding or an Abrahamic understanding of impurity or menstruation and a Hindu understanding of menstruation. Hindu understanding of menstruation has a lot of parallels with the Greek civilization, with Roman civilization, some parallels with even Egypt and Mesopotamians, because all these civilizations, all these polytheistic civilizations, they all were an impurity or purity impurity based civilizations, not a virtue sin based civilizations. Their understanding was rooted on the concepts of miasma. Miasma is ashaucha, what we call ashaucha, Greeks call miasma. They were not rooted in the concept of sin. It is the monotheists, especially the Christian theology, which gives enormous stress on virtue and sin. So, we have imported a Western narrative of the language of impurity and superimposed upon a Hindu terminology of ashaucha, and have been building a huge narrative, blogs, newspaper articles, academic papers, videos, documentaries, perpetrating this propaganda, this false information. So, coming to the second part now, after ashaucha, the second hermeneutic principle or framework given in the Vedic story is the menstruation as a purification process. So, the question is, what does menstruation purify? So, please note that all the points that I am making here, I am not making it out of the hat. There are references in our Dharma Shastra traditions, in our various texts, various smritis and itihasas texts, and you can find all the references in the book. So, this impurity, so what does menstruation purify? So, that is the second question. As you can see in the chart, for easy understanding I have made, it purifies impurity at the physical level, at the pranic level, and also with respect to adharmic action. At the physical level, I already noted that the very menstrual process, the biological process, is about removal of blood, vaginal secretions, endometrial tissues, the unfertilized egg, and so on and so forth, which are no longer needed in the body. So, it purifies the body by removing these things. Secondly, the Ayurvedic texts clearly mention that menstrual during the bleeding removes all the toxins from the body. The toxins are called as ama. Not just that related to uterine lining and all, but the other toxins from the body. So, Ayurveda greatly stresses that women should take rest. They should respect their biological process, they should respect their purifying process and allow their bodies rest, so that this purifying, this removal of toxins happens without any disturbance. Then there is the removal of pranic impurity. What does pranic impurity? That is, as I said, menstruation is heightened condition of rajas, but at the end of 3 days, the pancha pranas come back to a balanced level, because the excess rajasic energy has been removed. Am I making up these initiations, or did our ancestors really understand this process in detail? The fact is, if you read our Shastras, one of the Smriti texts, one of the Dharma Shastra texts, interestingly, it clearly mentions, if you are menstruating for the ashaucha is only for the 3 days, and if in case you are menstruating for, you are bleeding for 7 days or 10 days, then it means there must be some other medical problem in your body due to which you are having continuous bleeding for more than 3 to 4 days. In that case, Ashaucha does not apply to you. Ashaucha ends after 3 days or at best 4 days. It will not carry on forever and ever. Just because you bleed for 15 days due to some imbalance in your cycle does not mean Ashaucha is also there. What does it mean? That after the 3 days, the excess bleeding is due to some other cause. It is not due to heightened condition of Rajas. So, they had exact understanding of menstruation as removing this excess Rajasic energy lasting for 3 to 4 days. And it again brings back balance to the Tridoshas. So, this is the purifying aspect of menstruation at a pranic level, at the energy vital sheath. Lot of us do not really appreciate the vital sheath in today's time, because we have been fed the duality of body and mind, body and mind, body and mind. We recognize we have the physical body and there is something thinking behind, we recognize so that there is mind. So, we accept at best the presence of duality, but because we cannot see it with naked eye, we do not appreciate the presence of the pranamaya kosha, which is actually very, very important for our health at all levels, for our well-being at all levels. And all sadhana is basically an activity at a pranic and a mental level, pranamaya and manomaya kosha. Anyway, so coming back to the topic, the third kind of purification is the removal of adharmic actions. Actions at a physical level, actions at a speech level, actions at a mental level. See, in we all know that in our tradition, manasa, vacha, kaya, kaya, manasa, vacha. We speak about action at three different. Physically that we do the kaya, manasa that we do in the mind. We think bad about somebody in the mind, we say that is also adharma. You should not think bad about others. We speak bad about somebody, we say that is also adharma. So, our understanding of so-called morality, or I better use the term ethics or dharma, is not just limited to physical activity, it is also takes into its ambit the speech as well as mental activity. In fact, there are clear verses in Manusmriti, the much bad-mouthed text, but something which I think maybe in 50-60 years, once we get rid of all the Asuric forces, perhaps we will be able to appreciate better. It has clear verses in its, I think, 11th chapter or 10th chapter. It has a set of 6 verses which says there are 4 kind of adharma that can be performed by body, 3 or 4 kind. It says adultery is one, killing or murder is another, and stealing others, stealing that which does not belong to one is another. So, all these are considered as adharma of the body. Similarly, speaking falsehood, speaking bad about somebody else behind their back, idle talk, these are all adharma at the speech level. And then thinking about somebody else's spouse or thinking about somebody else's wealth or thinking about hurting others is all adharma at the mental level. So, all these are considered adharma, and our text says menstruation helps to free women of different kind of some kinds of adharmas performed at these 3 levels. At the physical level, we already saw that it removes 1/3 Brahma Hatya, that due to the non-fertilization of yag. At the speech level, I already mentioned the kind of things it helps to improve. The mental level, it purifies impure thoughts. How does it do? Because one of the practices
that a woman should practice during the 3 days is that she should practice it as a tapasya. She should sit separately from the family, not listen to, not talk too much, stay in a happy mood, self introspect. So, all these things purifies the mind. And very interestingly, our Dharma Shastra says, Vasishta Dharma Sutra I have quoted here, that menstruation frees one from feelings of dishonor due to unfortunate incidents like rape, sexual assault, etc. Consider this, today we see a lot of sexual assault, lot of rape happening, a lot of victims, they carry this deep anguish, deep sorrow, I can't even imagine, the deep pain throughout their lives. But here is a text, it is saying that women can, these are all just textual things, how is it even practical? I mean, women are assaulted every other day. So, do you mean that they all become free just like that? That is not the what the text is saying. See, it is providing a framework of understanding, a framework which you need to put into practice with Shraddha, which you need to adopt in your life, interiorize the message. Only then it will act upon you, it will make sense to you. If you have the Shraddha that, okay, I had this traumatic experience, but I have this Shraddha that this menstruation, the coming up periods, I will become free of the trauma. It will make me free of the trauma, then your mind will be tuned to that process. See, everything is in the mind. The trauma is in the mind. Trauma is actually not in the body. The trauma is in the mind. A victim of assault has the trauma in the mind. So, this is a purely a psychological thing. That I heard that there are some, for drug addicts and all, they have a certain way of making them become de-addicted. Like whenever they want to feel like taking, I heard, I don't know how much true it is, there is some center where they beat the hell out of them, so that they are trained to expect beating when they have the desire and finally get rid of that addiction. These are all different mechanisms to train the mind to remove one kind of vasana and put into another kind of vasana. So, that is what is happening here. So, if you are placing yourself in this framework of understanding about menstruation, then it is possible for you to psychologically become free of the trauma by using the menstruation as a tool, because as we will see further, the menstruation is not just bleeding. There are certain lifestyles, certain do's and don'ts. It is a whole entire package. It is an austere package. You put into yourself into that austerity mood, then the effect will happen on your mind. So, these are the different things that our Shastras, our tradition understands as perceives menstruation as a healing and a purifying process. It heals people at various level, it frees them of various kinds of impurities and adharmic actions, so on and so forth. Interestingly, there is a quote in Bauddhayana Dharma Sutra, and it says that women possess an unrivaled means of purification. They never become impure. For month to month, their temporary uncleanness removes their sins or papams. What does it mean? It means that women's entering temporary ashaucha does not make them impure or inferior or degrade them. Instead, it makes them ever pure. So, our understanding is completely opposite to the narrative about Hinduism that is prevalent today. Menstruation purifies at physical, speech and mental levels. We have a verses saying that women are pure in all limbs. Soma, Gandharva, Agni purifies them, gives them melodious voice and so on and so forth. Interestingly and importantly, men do not have this facility. We need to perform lot of tapasya, there is sandhya vandana, there is sadhana, puja and japa, what not, that men need to do to even get rid of very tiny mini wrong things we do day in and day out. We tell a lie, we need to do sandhya vandana to actually get over it, but women get over it by default when they have their menses. So, what comes by special effort to men comes as part of natural process to women. Menstruation is thus a privilege to women, privilege as being a self purifying and a healing process. But of course, I would add a caveat there. It does not mean that women can commit any crime and they say, okay, I am having a periods and I have become free of this crime. You do not get a free pass. That is not what the Shastra says. It simply means that there are certain unintentionally committed, uncontrollable things that happen day in and day out and you can become free from them. That does not mean you murder your teacher, you murder your husband or murder somebody else and you say, I am committed nothing. It is not like that. So, anyway, so as I said, menstruation is also a tapasya, austerity and a period of rest. Tapas means any form of austerity, hardship voluntarily undertaken to attain a goal. In the spiritual context, it refers to indriya nigraha, restrainment of the body, mind and the senses. Lot of vratas you are all aware of, doing upvasa and doing that fast, this restrainment, tapasya, all these things come under austerity. And menstruation is one austerity like that. As the paricharya or the lifestyle practices that the dharma shastras and the Ayurvedic texts prescribe include one common thing is sexual abstinence. And that sexual abstinence is also for the tapasvi who is in a forest, because there is a indriya nigraha. Similarly, it asks women to stay away from anointing herself, doing makeup, sleeping on bed and having other luxuries, combing themselves, all those things. See, these are the things that women do day in, day out. You avoid those things, you prevent yourself, you stop yourself, you restrain yourself by from doing these activities. So, this leads to indriya nigraha, which is tapasya. And rest is a must need. I already mentioned that Ayurveda lays very huge stress on this rest. No cooking, no physical exertion through sports, household works. So, this is all for the rest. Why rest? Because I will come to the why part in Ayurvedic thing. Because physical exertion, in short, is highly harmful to the women's body, highly harmful to the the biological process. It causes imbalance in the doshas. So, then the question arises, we saw the final thing as why celebrate menstruation? As I said, menstruation is connected deeply to childbirth, fertility. The whole menstrual cycle is to facilitate women to become mother. The onset of menstruation is celebrated among different communities across India. As Sai Swarupa was mentioning, it is kind of half marriage in many communities. I think especially in Tamil Nadu, it is still even today they celebrate it in a very, very huge way. It has very much reduced in Karnataka, I think. They do it small ritual. So, menarche ritual, see menarche ritual is a very interesting aspect. Unfortunately, we have, kind of in the last 100 years, I think the practice has reduced and it is reducing day by day. It has an importance of half marriage, but it also has a correspondence to the Upanayana of the boys. The purification that brahmachari boys attain through Sandhya Vandana, which is the Sandhya Vandana is due to Upanayana. Without Upanayana, no Sandhya Vandana, right? So, that purification Kanyas attain through monthly menses. So, there is a clear parallel. Further, menarche ritual marks a transition of a girl from a Kumari avastha to a Kanya avastha, just as Upanayana marks transition from a Kumara avastha to a Brahmachari avastha. And menstruation makes women eligible to enter Grihastha ashrama and facilitates them to perform their Stri dharma, including entering motherhood, which are unique to them. See, one thing I would like to clarify here, see, today we speak about child marriage, but let us take it with qualifiers that in Indian culture in the past, even when the child marriage or early marriage, I do not like the term child marriage, it is too negative, I like the term early marriage. When it happened, actual consummation of the marriage or the girl going to the husband's house happened only after she attained puberty. Mostly such marriages, see, there is, we have to differentiate between classical India and post-Islamic India. In the last 100 years, there were indeed child marriages, in the sense both bride and groom were married at the age of 7, 6, 4, 5, 8 or something like that. But in classical India, from the texts like Kama Sutras and Natya Shastra, we get a different picture. And even Dharma Shastra. See, Dharma Shastra says 8 years for Brahmana girl, because it says the Upanayana, the Vivaha is a Upanayana equivalent for women. So, the Dharma Shastra point of view, the age is for Brahmana girl, it is 8 years. For Kshatriya, it will be 10, and for a Vaishya 12 or 14 or something like that. But in reality, marriages happened well after puberty, maybe at the age of 13, 14 or 15. We see in the texts like Kama Sutra about Gandharva Vivaha, about how to approach women. Even in Dharma Shastra itself, Gandharva Vivaha is given a legitimate place, and it also speaks about how if a father or a parent fails to get their daughter married after age of 12, after she has her menarche, she can wait for 3 years and then she can choose her own husband. So, this is Gandharva Vivaha, in the sense, any love marriage in today's time is the Shastra Baddha, because today men and women are marrying way after their puberty, many years after their menarche. So, they are actually Shastra Baddha. The point is, we had a clear understanding of the biological process, and menstruation or the menarche was considered as a very vital aspect of life, very vital stage of life. And we have various deities who are specifically or sometimes generally associated with menstruation. Take the example of Navaratri. So, 9 nights we worship 9 different forms of Durga, Navadurgas. The first 5 forms are specifically associated with 5 aspects of women's life, women's biological evolution. Shailaputri is a child, Brahmacharini is a Kanya, she is specifically associated with menstruation, menarche, Chandraghanta, marriage, Kushmanda, pregnancy, Skandamata is motherhood. The correlation is unmissable because the order of accounting for this, the deities in the Navadurga is the same. Pratamam Shailaputri cha, Dvitiyam Brahmacharini, Tritiyam Chandraganteti, Kushmandeti Chaturtakam, Panchamam Skandamateti, Katyayini, that it goes on. So, you cannot miss the correlation here. And then there are different deities who are specifically associated. For example, in one of the Dharma Shastra texts, Dharma Sindhu, when there is some dosha regarding Ritukala and all, it suggests worship of, I forgot the name of the Devi, a form of Gauri or something, I think Bhavani or Gauri. It mentions that as something to be done. And then we have festivals and temples like Kamakya, who is a Yoni Pita. She's almost everybody has heard. There is every year she enters menstruating state for 3 days, and the Ambubachi festival is celebrated then. We have Harachandi in Odisha, and the Raja Parva, the festival itself is called as Raja or menstruation, wherein they celebrate the menstruation of Bhumi Devi and Harachandi. And even in Karnataka, among the Tulu community, they celebrate Keddasa, where they celebrate the menstruation of Earth, Bhumi Devi. And we have temples from Kamakya to temples in Kerala, where the presiding deity undergoes menstruation. So, we are very clear that menstruation is a sacred celebration. It is something to be celebrated. It is a positive healing process, and there is nothing negative about it. Even the understanding of Ashaucha is not negative. It is merely a statement of ineligibility, is merely a statement of the biological, physiological and pranic and mental state of a woman at that time. We cannot understand the process of Ashaucha without understanding the process of self purification. And the final, the section, not final, I think I am almost over another 15-20 minutes, Ayurveda. And I find this very important, very relevant, because we have been too much taken in by the allopathic modern medicine, that we have beginning to sideline whatever medical knowledge we have inherited, the codified, the documented medical knowledge. One example is, almost all people who are educated in modern education, all the women of our times, they feel having pain, cramps, etc. during their periods is a normal thing. That is something that is taken for granted. So, you have a monthly period, then you have some pain, some cramp, some irritation. But do you know what Ayurveda defines menstruation, normal menstruation as? It defines normal menstruation as one which is not associated with pain or a burning sensation, and neither very excessive nor very scanty in amount. Just see this. We do not even know that having pain is not a normal thing. Our lifestyle has become so bad, has become so disturbed, that we feel that this is the new normal. This has become the new normal. In Ayurveda, just a brief basics of Ayurveda, Ayurveda recognizes menstruation as a physiological process governed by the actions of doshas. Doshas are 3 number. You might have all heard about Vata, Pitta, Kapha. These are 3 doshas. And health is defined as a person having these doshas in balance, and illness is imbalance in these doshas. And the entire monthly cycle, menstrual cycle, is divided into 3 phases: Ritukala, dominated by kapha dosha. It is a preparation for ovulation. Ritu Vyatita Kala, the secretory phase where nutrients are secreted in anticipation of conception. Here Pitta is predominant, and Rajasrava Kala, the actual bleeding, the 3 to 5 days, which is dominated by Vata dosha. So, Shushruta Samhita defines a disturbed artavam. Artavam is another name for menstruation. Disturbed artavam or the abnormal menstruation, he says it is caused by disturbed vayu, that is disturbed vata or a disturbed pitta or a disturbed kapha or the blood either severely or in combination of 2 or more doshas, and this will hamper the ability of a woman to conceive. So, in short, the Ayurvedic texts are very clear that normal menstruation means without pain and all those things, and abnormal menstruation is caused by the imbalance in the doshas, one or the many of the doshas. And this abnormality or the imbalance in doshas will have negative consequence on the health of the women and hamper the ability of the women to conceive children. So, what is the solution? Ayurveda prescribes a mode of life to be adopted by menstruating women during those 3 days. This is called as Rajaswara Paricharya, the lifestyle practices, the do's and don'ts for a menstruating woman to protect her health, to prevent any health defects that may arise. Charaka Samhita summarizes in a small way, saying that after the onset of menstruation, for the 3 days and nights, the woman should observe celibacy, should sleep on the ground, take food with the hands from an unbroken utensil, and should not cleanse her body in any way. Pradyumna ji noted how women have received this knowledge from their parents and grandparents that they should not take a bath, they should sit separately, take a rest, but they did not know why. Why not take a bath? I mean, I think we cannot even imagine not taking a bath a day. Especially in the kind of narrative today is built, menstruating women, they feel, no, I have to take a bath, so I feel so bad, with all blood coming out and all. But Ayurveda says you should not take a bath for 3 days. It says because it harms your health. How does it harm your health? By causing imbalance in the doshas. See, I have taken this from one of a paper. They have made this, summarize the teachings in various Ayurvedic texts into do's and don'ts and the results, the effects on the child if the don'ts are performed. The do's are to observe celibacy, sleep on a mattress, it says kusha mattress, but even otherwise simple mattress will do. To eat very simple food made of ghee, rice, milk, barley, and to eat it in a very less quantity. Eat simple food, easily digestible food, avoid junk food, avoid outside food, avoid spicy food, and eat all of them in a very small quantity. And importantly, to eat food directly from hands or clay utensils or leaves, banana leaves, not from metal utensils, because metals are conductor of energy. Metals, they have the effect on your own body. What are the don'ts? Not sleeping during the daytime, because even normally the Ayurvedic and other texts says we should not sleep during daytime, because it harms our health. For menstruating women, it is even more important because the body is very susceptible, very sensitive during that time, and the doshas become easily upset. Use of collyrium, various kind of makeup, the eye makeup and all those things should be avoided. Crying, weeping, excessive laughter, taking body massage, nail paring, bathing, anointment must be avoided. Running must be avoided. Any physical exertion must be avoided. Talking too much must be avoided. Asking women to stay in a room was not to oppress them, but to make her, you know, staying together means we all talk, we all converse, we all communicate. A partial kind of segregation is one of the way to reduce this conversation. And what does these things cause? See, it says not to become exposed to wind, not to go outside exposed to wind, not to do fatigue work. And it has listed lot of things, abnormalities that may arise in the child if these don'ts are practiced every time. So, it is not that one time you do something and suddenly some bad thing happens, but you keep doing these unhealthy practices, then these unhealthy practices have a severe effect on your health and the health of the child which you will give birth in a long term basis. So, all these aspects, the most of the practices that our ancestors have transmitted to our generation, be it partial segregation, be it sexual abstinence, be it eating very healthy, very light food, avoiding meat, etc., junk food, etc., or the practice of not going to temples, not doing spiritual activity, they all have very strong basis in Ayurveda as well as in Dharma Shastras. So, the temple restriction is a elephant in the room, and I think that needs to be addressed also. So, what is any puja or anything we do, what is it? It is a spiritual process. How does this spiritual process work? How does it work? What does it mean that I do a puja? What does that happen? Any activity has a influence on your manomaya kosha, the mind, the pranamaya kosha, the pancha pranas and the physical body. When you do a puja, the prana, the apanavayu moves upwards. Any puja, you do it or you go to a Satyanarayan puja or you go to a temple, all these energetic kshetrams, these kind of adhyatmic energies, they cause the apanavayu to move upward, or at least an attempt to move an upward. But what is happening during menstruation? The apanavayu is moving downward. So, you are disturbing the menstruation process, you are disturbing the flow of apana downwards, and this disturbance will have serious health consequences on the woman's body. That is the first aspect. The second aspect is, our temple is not a church, it is not a museum, it is not a place of congregation, it is a energy kshetram, it is a Shakti Pita. So, during menstruating women, during her menstruation, she is in heightened condition of rajas, the rajasic energy is going out. So, she enters a temple, the rajasic energy which is going out, it creates an imbalance in the energy of the temple. That needs to be rectified later using Shuddhi and other process. Here Shuddhi process again is not a negative term, it is merely a reference to the process that brings back balance to the energy of the kshetra. This is all the play of energy. That is why I said today we do not give importance to the pranamaya kosha, the play of the pancha pranas, the play of the energy, our vital energy body. So, the prohibition or the advice to menstruating women to not perform puja, homa, japa, havan, or to go to temple is simply this, that her body is will be unable to take on the influence of the external adhyatmic energies. The influence of these puja and all is contradictory to the process that is happening in her body. Second, menstruation itself is a tapasya, as I noted. So, when you are in a state of tapasya, you do not go and do some else activity. If I say, if a sadhu takes a vrata that he will do a particular tapasya for so many days, he will not go and do something else during that time. He will concentrate on his tapasya. So, this is not a question of discrimination, not a question of superstition. It is merely an understanding of the process, understanding of how the body, the pranamaya, annamaya and manomaya kosha exists and works. So, the Hinduism and modernity. I spoke briefly about this at the beginning, how the current narrative is problematic. One of the source of the current narrative is Christian theology, but the other source is modern scientism, the Western scientific worldview, which has been again copy pasted into Indian context. Science per se is nothing wrong, but the way science is understood, the way the modern science is understood is deeply problematic. The modern narrative on menstruation is predominated by Western cultural values rooted in a scientific worldview, which is derooted from the sacred dimensions, which is derooted from a holistic understanding, like I spoke about the three panchakoshas and three gunas and all those things. It reduces all non-physical aspects into a mere taboo. The problem with the modern understanding of science or modern approach to science or modern scientific worldview is that it is very anthropocentric and it is very body centric, it is very materialistic. It does not understand non-material phenomenon. It reduces all cultural understandings prevalent across the world of non-material phenomenons. It calls them superstition and taboo. Thereby, it reduces the entire experience of menstruation into a merely negative notions, negative perceptions of pain, cramps, an unavoidable physiological process, an annoyance that must be overcome through drugs, pills, sanitary napkins, whatever. Consider this. What are the names of the two popular brands of sanitary napkins in India? One is Stay Free and another is Whisper. Have you ever deliberated upon the names Stay Free? Why do these commercial companies want women to become free from menstruation, when menstruation is so much relevant, so much central to women? Why do they want to make women free from that process? What are they speaking? What are they teaching? What is the hidden underlying subconscious message? The choice of the word is rooted in this worldview that menstruation is an irritation. Menstruation is an annoyance. It is a physical process somehow we must overcome to be a advanced progressive citizen of 21st century. So, that is the hidden underlying perception that is being transmitted to young girls, millions of young girls each day, each year. What about the other product, Whisper? Whispering means, talking in a very low voice, keeping something secret. They say that Hinduism has created a taboo that we do not want to speak about menstruation. But the fact is, it is not the Hindus. It is the modernity which has created this taboo and a narrative of shame. By naming their product as whisper, they are indirectly, subconsciously giving this message that this is something which should not be discussed, which should be discussed in shush shush voice, behind the backs. So, if schoolgirls today hesitate to speak openly, even among themselves, the modern narrative has, the modern commercials has a lot to play in it. It is not a coincidence. But you go to rural areas, even today rural women speak openly. When we have festivals on this topic, when you celebrate which is Ritukala and all those things, then where is the question of shame, where is the question of hiding? So, we must stop, stop a moment and reflect on the kind of narrative that modern education and modernity is imposing upon us. Take the example of sanitary napkins again, because because that is the most visual medium in which people relate to menstruation today. All these advertisements, somehow the image they give is just by wearing these pads, women they attain freedom. They become free to swim, free to run, win gold medals, attend schools. What I sometimes feel, what are they smoking? Because the lifestyle that they are promoting is completely unhealthy. As I noted, the Ayurveda clearly states any physical exertion is very harmful to the health of a woman. So, you are promoting a highly unhealthy narrative, highly unhealthy practices, and then you are saying that we are progressive, we are asking for freedom of women from taboos and restrictions. So, in the name of freeing one from cultural taboos, modern scientific education is promoting unscientific practices that are harmful to health, and the obsession with a particular scientific biological narrative of menstruation has alienated women from their own bodies and bodily experiences. They have prevented women from discovering a positive meaning to the process as a part of their self-discovery. Since all cultural knowledge, all subjective experience have been reduced to merely a superstition and false belief. So, just compare how Hinduism posits menstruation as a celebratory process, as a purifying process, as a healing process, versus modernity, which makes menstruation, which reduces menstruation to some kind of irritation, some kind of annoyance, which must be overcome through drugs, through various process. So, we need to think before being taken by the narrative that is built around us. We need to stop and think what are the motivations of these narratives, what are the theological and philosophical basis of these narratives, and whether these narratives are even in sync with our own cultural values, our own traditional values, our own understanding, very instinctive understanding of life. I believe even today, except for a bunch of culturally deracinated group of people, most of us are instinctively and intuitively connected to this land, to this culture, to dharma, and to the Indian knowledge traditions. There is lot of cloud there is lot of mud which is actually preventing from us from to directly access these knowledge traditions, knowledge systems, knowledge values, but we intuitively are connected to it nevertheless. So it is my hope that people begin questioning. They don't take everything science is not necessarily true. See, we have this trend among our Hindus today. We say, ये वैज्ञानिक है, हमारा हिंदू धर्म बहुत वैज्ञानिक है, हमारा हिंदू धर्म, our Hindu traditions very scientific. I think we are become too obsessed with proving our traditions are scientific, because the scientific term we are using, it has a very limited scope. See, because we understand it in the way the modern science understands itself, as being rooted in a materialism, as rooted in a anthropocentrism, rooted in a body consciousness. These cannot explain or understand the nuances that Hindu philosophy or Hindu texts or Hindu traditions encompass. So we should stop trying to prove ourselves to be scientific. Like in one of the talk I gave in Mangalore Lit Fest, a lady, well-meaning lady, but she was telling how the black energy and black matter, our Shiva and Tandava represent black energy and black matter. I said, you are simply collaborating. Why do you have this craving to say that the Hindu philosophical concepts is scientific? Why can't you accept the fact of Shiva and Tandava for what they are, without trying to speculate that they must refer to some black, black energy, black matter and what all those things? You don't need it. That is another kind of corruption or a distortion that is happening. But the point is, we need to discover our own knowledge systems, our own understanding of life and connect with it, because it is my firm understanding from experience, from belief, that our civilization is a superior civilization, our understanding of life is a superior understanding of life, and our knowledge system is a superior knowledge system. So some of the practices that modern women can adopt, I have taken this from last appendix from my book, because this I find is the most relevant part. I am not saying that whatever we practice in the past, we have to practice in the present. I am not arguing for going back into some golden age in the history, but I am arguing for living in the present by living in such a way that we continue our past, continue our civilization. We become connected to that perennial civilizational knowledge system. And we can do it, as this slide is a good example. I spoke about Rajaswala Paricharya, I spoke about practices in the Dharma Shastras and Ayurveda that they suggest for menstruating women. Here I have summarized something that modern women can also practice. For example, food. No matter whether you are working in a corporate field or no matter you are a housewife, no matter whatever work you are doing, this is one thing all women can do during their monthly periods. Eating very light meals, perhaps rice with ghee or milk or a curd rice or meat made of barley, but in any case, eating a vegetarian food even if you are non-vegetarian, avoiding junk food, eating home cooked food, and eating very small quantity, enough to fill the stomach or maybe keep the stomach little bit empty, and eating using fingers, even though normally you may use the spoons and all those things, but during those times you use your fingers. At least avoid metal spoons and forks, use say mud spoons or something like that. Using clay utensils, plates made of leaves, avoid metal utensils. These are some of the things which is practical even today. Observing celibacy is another thing which is easily practical, can be practiced by anybody even today. Not sleeping during the day, sleeping on a mat or a charpoy instead of your regular bed. The self-adorning part, of course, this may be difficult for those who go to office, that not to take bath, avoiding makeup, brushing, anointment, use of colorium, body massage, hair combing and all. But those who work from home or for homemakers, they can easily practice this. Moreover, even those who go to a job, they can, and I strongly believe they should, take a day or two leave during these times and practice these. Mental stress, keeping mind free of stress, mental calm, focusing on auspicious and joyful things, avoiding laughter too much. At least try to understand before thinking of rebelling. So most of the things that I have listed here, this is in the appendix of my book, this is easily practicable. If not all of them, some of them. 1 month you do 3 of them, next month you do 1 of them, the third month you do 10 of them. But the point is, doing them to some extent is possible, is practical, and it is very much useful. It is for the benefit of the women. All these practices, the Ayurvedic texts and the Dharma Shastras, all them, the sole criteria, the sole intention is to protect the health of women, to enhance the lifestyle of women. So the ultimate beneficiary will be women itself. So with this I end my presentation, and I thank you all for patiently listening to it. So the books are available, and anybody interested can access them. Thank you.